Hey everybody, Rob here. It's time for a couple of brand new ProRevenge stories. First one, Fiance left me due to my cancer diagnosis. I left her destitute. Let's jump right in. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This has been 4 years ago, so the sting is gone and my revenge has been had. Sorry if this isn't the right forum. We dated for 4 years and had what I thought was a great relationship. We were both well-established professionals who both owned homes in the same neighborhood and both with daughters in the home. Her daughter was 11 and mine was 16 when we met. We had actually planned to get married, build a house, and raise the two together. We planned the house build because she had recently been diagnosed with a neurological disease that would eventually put her in a wheelchair and need something ADA friendly. During the planning stages, I began doing landscape and construction projects on her home to increase the resale value. All in, I invested roughly $30,000 into the home, running everything through my side construction business for tax, permitting, and resale purposes. We had a contract that payment would be made upon the sale of the home. I produced invoices for each and every project, but never pushed for payment because of the prior agreement. Fast forward 6 months, we're looking at property to develop and finalizing drawings on the home when I began feeling ill. I couldn't eat, constantly vomiting and passing blood. I began noticing that my abdomen looked swollen, which was odd because we were both very clean eaters and were in the gym every day. So I went to the doctor and began having tests done. During this time, she began having small cognitive issues, and the stress of her current position was exacerbating her condition. So, she took a $20,000 per annum cut in pay along with a lesser position inside the company. After a month or so of different tests and a biopsy, it came back that I had a golf ball-sized tumor in my stomach and would need to begin chemotherapy. So, I began chemo and radiation treatments, which made me, expectedly so, extremely ill. She was spending time helping around my place on the weekends and staying over more, to the point that they were both at my home more than theirs. At this point, I suggested that we go ahead and put one of our houses on the market and move in together until the new house was built. I have great supplemental insurance as well as a long-term illness plan, so using that coupled with the sale of one of our houses would push us through comfortably and help ease the financial stress on her. Shortly after this discussion, she became extremely distant. Her daughter wasn't coming down and hanging out with mine anymore. She had excuses for not getting together. She quit driving me to treatments and stopped staying over. She then dropped a bomb, a sentence that will forever be burned into my psyche. I love you, but I can't see myself taking care of someone this sick in the long term, and I don't think we should see each other any longer. In a text. It broke me, I won't lie. This was the first woman I had ever opened up to and planned a life with since my wife died when my children were 1 and 3. However, I tried to be mature about it. I forced myself to understand her position and to accept what I could not change. I calmly, the next day, gathered all of her things, packed them neatly, loaded them in my truck, and took them to our house to leave on the back porch while she was at work, in order to avoid any awkward exchanges. Walking around the back and under the porch cover, I sat down a box and saw her in her back living room, on the couch, having sex with a man that she had introduced to me as a lifelong friend. I had dinner and drinks with this man and his girlfriend. We had gone on vacation with them as well. I never spoke of the incident with her and simply sent her a text later explaining that I would leave things on my side porch to pick up at her convenience. I discovered 8 or 9 months later from his now ex-girlfriend that they had broken up due to him confessing that he had been sleeping with my SO, dating back to about the time we were finishing drawings on the new home. Now I'm pissed. Revenge time. At this point, I had finished chemo and radiation for the time being and was feeling healthier. I was going through some much neglected paperwork when I ran across the file that contained $32,680 in unpaid, long overdue invoices, which were promptly sent to my attorney to begin lien processing on the home. It turns out that I couldn't have done this a moment too soon because she was set to put her house on the market. Coupled with interest over the course of what was then 19 months overdue, the invoices were hefty. That, along with the agreement of settling them when the house was sold and attorney fees, left her with roughly $10,000 after the sale of the home and settling her current mortgage. She promptly had to back out of the purchase of another home and moved in with her oldest daughter, sister-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. She also had to leave her job and began receiving disability. I ran into her a little over a year ago and she looked as if she had aged 20 years and was in the wheelchair we had talked about. We chatted cordially but briefly, and I excused myself and went on with my day. A few days later, her younger daughter called me and spoke of my running into her mom, and could we hang out sometime? I gave a vague answer, thanked her for calling, and again went on with my day. The ex then called me a week or so later and began apologizing for leaving me as she did. Again, cordial but short, I thanked her for calling and hung up. She began texting, and this went on for several weeks, until once she asked if I could ever see us rekindling what we had, to which I replied, "I can't see myself taking care of someone so sick in the long term. Remember the box on your back porch? Did you think that lifelong friend brought that over to you from my house? Good luck to you, goodbye." OP said in a comment that he's now been cancer-free for 2 years. I think the best part of this story is where OP throws her line right back at her at the end. Well done. On to our next story. Teacher calls student ridiculous racial slurs. Revenge time? I think so. Let's jump right in. This post is completely told from the perspective of one of my closest friends. All the information is 100% from her, and this whole article is checked by her. Now, on to arguably one of the greatest revenge stories of all time. So this all starts in the early 2000s. In this time, we have to remember that video recording and wiretapping and all of this great stuff was seen before, but very seldomly used by the general public. Additionally, at this time, a lot more things were tolerated in terms of statements made by people. Now let's call my friend Samantha Sam for short. Sam was a very athletic and popular girl. In normal situations, this would seem like a great thing. But with Mr. Thomas, the history teacher, this was the worst situation possible. After seeing how Sam would walk the halls with students, and even teachers talking to her and laughing with her, Mr. Thomas to some degree felt jealous. Thomas was a teacher that was quite antisocial. After being in the school for 30 plus years and reaching retirement age, Thomas was sick of everything that he heard and saw in the school. If it didn't directly benefit him, it angered him. It should also be said that Thomas was not a fan of newer times. While the 2000s obviously didn't have certain standards that are in the present day, it was still quite a bit more advanced than the 70s when he started teaching. One day, Sam had track practice and was unable to come to class by the bell. While she did have a note and had every reason to be late, Thomas wasn't having it that day. He immediately spoke in a harsh, loud tone and told her, "Sam, go ahead and walk yourself down to the principal's office." Now, as we all know, this is totally and completely uncalled for. So, Sam simply replied, "Mr. Thomas, I apologize for being late, but I do have a note and a valid reason for doing so." Now, this, of course, is a completely sane and fair response. But Thomas, being the idiot he is, decides to say, in a snobbishly cool voice with very colorful language, which I won't say, "Maybe if you weren't so hung up on clothing yourself in the locker room, trying to be a princess and get the boys, we wouldn't have to be having this conversation." Now, please understand that if that wasn't bad enough, he said some extremely harsh words that I just can't say. In tears, Sam immediately flings herself in her chair and puts her head in her arms. Then, Thomas, taking advantage of the situation, goes over to her and whispers, "Hurts, doesn't it?" Thomas then goes on to teach the class with a cheerful attitude as he is happy that he was able to hurt someone for no apparent reason. Sam goes on for the rest of the day with stares from students and shock from herself. After coming home, Sam immediately tells her parents, and her parents are horrified. Without a moment of hesitation, they call the school and report the teacher. Now you would think it ends there, right? Nope. The principal, unfortunately, says that the teacher denies the situation and that there's no way of proving it. He claims that students may exaggerate and that it will just turn into a he said, she said battle. Now this is bad for two reasons. First, the girl didn't get the justice she deserves. Secondly, Thomas now knows that she reported him. The next day, Sam walks into class with a monotone face and sits at her desk without talking. Thomas walks to the board and starts the lesson. While Sam is still sad and distraught, she starts to be hopeful that maybe the situation will blow over and nothing more will be said of it. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen. Thomas decides to up the ante. In the middle of the lesson, he says, "Similar to this situation in the war, Sam and her blank parents decided to be blanks and report me blank and try to go to war. But surprise, surprise, it backfires. Looks like I truly am the good in this situation after all, isn't it, Sam?" Sam is out of words. After telling her parents again, her dad decides that he doesn't want to make this mistake again and decides to take matters into his own hands. He has a plan, so he calls the principal and reports him again and purposely says, "Go ahead and ask Thomas himself." The next day, Sam walks into class with the same sad look and sits at the table. This time, Thomas isn't looking to wait to snap. When the whole class arrives, Thomas says, "Well, look who it is, blank. Your family is blank. You will never be blank. And no one gives a blank about you. You will never be anyone because you're just another blank and a girl. So skip on back to the blank who made you." Sam then lifts her head and keeps a straight face. She then lifts her hand and clicks the stop button on the tape recorder. Thomas begins to talk, but even he knows at this point that there's no point in making excuses. Without asking, Sam walks over to the principal's office and hands him the tape, simply saying, "Want evidence? Be a dear and have a listen." After a minor investigation takes place, no extra actions need to be taken for the termination of one Mr. Thomas. As terminations normally happen when there are no students, Mr. Thomas comes at the end of the day in his normal clothes. After packing his things and getting his final check, he rests his hands on the double doors and sees Sam sitting on the bench. She looks to him and says, "You forgot one thing, Mr. Thomas. It's not the good people that win the war, it's the smart people that win the war." Oh, come on, OP. You could have finished this just like the last story and thrown his words right back to him. Come on, wouldn't a perfect ending be when you're walking out of the door of the classroom, you look back at the teacher and say, "Hurts, doesn't it?" I'd like to thank both OPs for posting their stories to the ProRevenge subreddit. You can visit them at the links in the description below. Please go there and give them an upvote. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comment Chameleon saying thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.